The arrangement weighs 11 pounds. It is a casket spray, white lilies, white roses, eucalyptus, baby's breath, the traditional funeral arrangement that a family orders when a person dies, and that a florist builds in the cooler at 4 a.m., and that a driver loads into a refrigerated van and delivers to the funeral home by 9 a.m. so that the arrangement is in position before the family arrives and the family sees the flowers. And the flowers do what flowers do at a funeral, which is say the thing that language cannot say, the thing that exists between grief and beauty, the thing that a family purchases for $600, because the $600 is the cost of saying goodbye with flowers. And the flowers must be there, and the flowers must be perfect, and the flowers must arrive on time, because the funeral does not wait for the delivery, and the delivery does not wait for the driver, and the driver does not wait for anything, because the driver is the last link in the chain between the order and the casket, and the chain cannot break. Because a broken chain means empty space beside the body, and empty space beside the body is the one thing that a grieving family will not forgive. The driver's name is Mercy Blanton. She is 37 years old. She is a delivery driver for Everbloom Floral, a regional flower company that operates 14 retail shops and a central distribution hub across the greater Atlanta metropolitan area. Mercy drives Route 7, the South Metro Corridor, Fayette County, Clayton County, South Fulton, the suburban geography where the funeral homes and the hospitals and the churches and the event venues create the consistent demand that a flower delivery company depends on, the demand that does not pause for holidays or weekends or weather, because people do not pause their dying or their marrying or their celebrating for holidays or weekends or weather. And the flowers must arrive and the driver must deliver them. Mercy has been driving for Everbloom for 3 years. She drives a white Ford Transit Connect with a single-zone refrigeration unit that maintains the cargo at 40 degrees, the temperature that preserves the arrangements during the route, the temperature that keeps the petals firm and the stems hydrated, and the colors vivid for the 90 minutes between the hub and the delivery, the temperature window in which a flower arrangement remains what the customer ordered and not what the heat produces, which is wilting, which is death, which is the wrong message at a funeral. Today, Mercy is delivering to the funeral of her own mother. The CEO's name is Leighton Marsh. He is 58 years old. He is the founder and CEO of Everbloom Floral. Everbloom is his garden. He started the company 24 years ago with a single shop in Buckhead, a 400-square-foot storefront between a dry cleaner and a nail salon, the kind of retail space that exists in the margins of a strip mall and that a florist can afford because the rent is what the margins produce, and the margins are the flowers that don't sell, and the flowers that do sell, and the difference between the two is the rent. Leighton's grandmother, Odell, was a church florist, the volunteer who arranged the altar flowers every Sunday at Mount Zion AME in Decatur, the woman who grew zinnias and dahlias and gladiolus in the backyard and who cut them on Saturday evening, and drove them to the church on Sunday morning and arranged them in the brass vases on the altar. And the arrangements were not professional arrangements, they were garden arrangements, the kind that a woman makes from what she grows and that contain the imperfections of a garden, the stem that bends, the petal that browns, the leaf that the beetle ate. And the imperfections were the beauty, because the imperfections were the evidence that the flowers came from a garden and not a warehouse, and that the hands that arranged them were hands that grew them. Odell arranged flowers for Mount Zion for 31 years. Odell arranged the flowers for her own husband's funeral, cut the gladiolus from the backyard on the morning of the service, drove to the church, arranged them on the altar beside the casket, sat in the front pew, and watched the congregation file past the flowers that she grew and that she cut and that she arranged for the man she loved. She did not hire a florist. She did not order an arrangement. She did the work herself because the work was the grief, and the grief was the work, and the doing of the work was the way that Odell processed the loss. With her hands in the flowers, with the stems between her fingers, with the blade of the shears and the water in the vase, and the rhythm of arrangement that her body knew from 31 years of Sundays. Leighton built Everbloom thinking about Odell's hands. He built the company on the premise that flowers are not a product but a language, the language that people speak when English fails, when the words, "I'm sorry" and "I love you" and "goodbye" need a vessel that is not a word but a thing, a living thing, a thing that blooms and fades the way the moment blooms and fades, the rose that opens and closes the way grief opens and closes, the lily that faces upward the way hope faces upward. The premise was good. The company grew. The company hired drivers and designers and managers, and the growth produced the distance that growth always produces, the distance between the founder's intention and the company's operation, the distance between flowers are a language and the delivery window is 90 minutes and the driver has 14 stops and the route must be completed by 1 p.m. The employee retention report arrived 4 weeks ago. Driver turnover, 58% annual. The exit interviews contained a phrase that appeared with the frequency of an epitaph: treated like the van. Treated like the van. The drivers were describing themselves as equipment, as the vehicle that carries the flowers, as the machine that completes the route, as the thing that the company maintains to the minimum operational standard and that the company replaces when the thing stops functioning. The drivers were the van. The van was the driver. The distinction between the person and the vehicle had collapsed in the language of the people who drove the vehicles, and the collapse of the language was the collapse of the dignity, and the collapse of the dignity was the 58% turnover. "Drive the route," said Willa Cates, the operations manager, a woman who had been an Everbloom designer for 7 years before moving into management and who still arranged flowers for the display cooler at the Buckhead flagship because the arranging was the thing she loved, and the management was the thing the company needed, and the distance between love and need was the distance she traveled every morning when she walked past the design table and into the office. Drive the route. Deliver the funerals. Deliver the weddings. Deliver the hospital arrangements. Carry the flowers that carry the feelings. See what the driver sees. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from today, because this is the story of a CEO who delivered flowers for his own shop, and one delivery changed every route in his company. Monday, 3:45 a.m. The Everbloom Central Hub is in Forest Park, south of Atlanta, in an industrial park off of 75 where the warehouses and cold storage facilities cluster along the rail corridor. The hub is a 10,000 square foot facility, part walk-in cooler, part design studio, part distribution center, the place where the raw flowers arrive from the wholesalers at midnight and the designers arrive at 1 a.m. and the arrangements are built and the drivers arrive at 3:30 and the vans are loaded and the routes depart by 4:30 and the flowers arrive at the funeral homes by 9 and the hospitals by 10 and the offices by 11 and the weddings by 2 and the chain runs from midnight to 6 p.m. and the chain does not break. Layton's badge says Leo Falk, driver, Route 7. The cover, a temporary driver covering for a vacancy. Only Willa and the hub manager know. The hub at 3:45 a.m. is a specific kind of alive, the alive of a place that operates in the hours when the city sleeps, the nocturnal industry that produces the daytime beauty. The designers are at the tables, 12 tables, 12 designers, each building the day's orders from the buckets of stems and the spools of ribbon and the blocks of floral foam and the wire and the tape and the knowledge that lives in the fingers, the knowledge that a designer develops over years of cutting stems at a 45-degree angle and placing them in foam at the depth that the water reaches and the spacing that the eye requires and the balance that the arrangement demands. The designers are artists. The designers are paid $16.90 per hour. The designer's art is the product. The designer's pay is the budget. Route 7 is loaded by 4:15, 14 deliveries, 7 funeral arrangements, 3 hospital arrangements, 2 office arrangements, 1 wedding rehearsal, 1 residential birthday. The van is full, the cargo area organized by delivery order, the arrangements secured with bungee straps and non-slip mats, the casket sprays flat on the floor, the standing arrangements upright against the walls, the small arrangements in bins. The organization is critical. A shifted arrangement is a damaged arrangement, and a damaged arrangement is a failed delivery, and a failed delivery at a funeral is an unforgivable failure because the family is grieving and the flowers are the only beautiful thing in the room, and the only beautiful thing in the room cannot arrive damaged. Mercy arrives at 3:50. She is quiet. She is the kind of quiet that a person is when the person is carrying something that the quiet contains, not the quiet of a person who has nothing to say, but the quiet of a person who has too much to say and who has decided that the too much is better carried in silence than released into language. The silence is heavy. The silence weighs more than the 11-pound casket spray. "Morning," she says. That's all she says. She checks the manifest. 14 deliveries, the list of addresses and times and arrangement types, and customer names. She checks the van, temperature, fuel, cargo. She pulls out of the hub at 4:22. Leighton is in the passenger seat. If this story has touched your heart, take a moment to share it and subscribe to Untold Hearts, because sometimes the person who delivers the funeral flowers is grieving too. The first delivery is a hospital, Piedmont Fayette, in Fayetteville. A get-well arrangement, sunflowers and daisies, the bright geometry of hope, the arrangement that a family sends to a patient who is recovering and that communicates the optimism that the family cannot visit in person because visiting hours are limited, and the flowers visit on behalf of the family during the hours that the family cannot. Mercy carries the arrangement through the hospital lobby, up the elevator, to the nurses' station on the 3rd floor. She delivers the flowers to the room, 314, the patient's name on the order. She sets the arrangement on the bedside table. She adjusts the card. She leaves. The delivery takes 11 minutes. 11 minutes of walking through a hospital at 6:20 a.m., carrying flowers while wearing a uniform that says Everbloom and a face that says something else. "How long have you been driving?" Leighton asks. He asks on the drive to the second delivery. 3 years. Before Everbloom, I drove for a medical supply company. Before that, I was a home health aide. Before that, I was in school, nursing school, LPN program, 2 semesters in before the money ran out. The money always runs out before the program does. So I drive. I drive because driving pays every 2 weeks and nursing school costs every semester. And the every 2 weeks is what the budget needs, and the every semester is what the budget can't do. Do you like it? I like the flowers. I like carrying something beautiful. Every other delivery job I've had, medical supplies, food, packages, the cargo was functional. The cargo did a job. The flowers don't do a job. The flowers do a feeling. I carry feelings all day. Joy to the hospital room, congratulations to the office, sympathy to the funeral home, romance to the restaurant. I carry the thing that the sender can't carry in person. I'm the stand-in. I'm the arms that carry what the heart sends. I like that. She navigates the van onto I-75 South, merging into the pre-dawn traffic that exists at this hour. The trucks and the airport shuttles and the hospital shift workers, the people whose days begin before the city's day begins, the nocturnal economy that operates in the hours between midnight and 7 when the rest of the economy is asleep. My mother liked that I deliver flowers. She liked that of all the things I could drive, packages, pallets, pipes, I drive something alive. She said, "You carry living things to people who need beauty. That's not a delivery. That's a ministry." That's what she called it. Ministry. My mother was a churchwoman, New Hope Baptist, 51 years, choir, usher board, hospitality committee. She saw everything through the church. She saw my delivery route through the church. She saw the casket spray through the church. She said the casket spray is the last gift the living give the dead, and the person who carries the last gift is carrying sacred weight. Sacred weight, 11 pounds of sacred weight. Her mother's name was Della. Della Blanton. Della was 70 years old. Della had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The diagnosis came in August, 5 months ago. The 5 months that compress a lifetime into a timeline. The timeline that begins with, "We found something," and ends with the casket spray in the back of the van. Della was a cafeteria worker at a middle school in Jonesboro for 22 years. The woman who stood behind the serving line and scooped the mashed potatoes and the green beans, and who knew every child's name, and who gave extra portions to the children who came through the line with the specific hunger that suggests the school lunch is the meal, not a meal, the meal. Della retired at 66. Della had 4 years of retirement before the diagnosis. 4 years. Mercy has 2 daughters. Keandra is 15, Amara is 8. The daughters live with Mercy in a 2-bedroom apartment in Morrow, south of Atlanta, close enough to the Everbloom hub for the commute to be 20 minutes, and close enough to the school for the girls to take the bus. The apartment is the geography of a single mother's budget. The rent at $1,185 is the anchor, and everything else arranges itself around the rent the way furniture arranges itself around the walls, fitting where it fits, leaving gaps where the budget has gaps. My mother watched the girls in my early days, the days when I leave at 3:30 a.m. She'd come to the apartment at 3, sleep on the couch, be there when the girls woke up. She did that twice a week for 2 years, then the cancer. Then she couldn't. Now my neighbor watches them. Ms. Treadwell, 68 years old, retired postal worker, comes at 3:15, sleeps on the same couch. I pay Ms. Treadwell $40 a week. My mother did it for free. The $40 a week is the cost of my mother's absence. The $40 a week is what my mother's presence was worth to the budget. My mother's love was free. Her replacement costs $40. What don't you like? The pay, the schedule, the van, the policy. The way the company treats the route like a math problem and the driver like a variable in the math. 14 deliveries in 8 hours across 67 miles of South Metro Atlanta traffic. The routing software says 67 miles takes 4 hours and 18 minutes. The routing software has never driven Jonesboro Road at 8 a.m. The routing software has never parked a delivery van on a one-way street in College Park. The routing software has never carried an 11-pound casket spray up 2 flights of stairs at a funeral home that doesn't have an elevator. The routing software is a computer. I am a body. The computer and the body do not experience the route the same way. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second, costs nothing, and tells us to keep making stories like this one. Back to the story. Day 2. The math. Between deliveries, the drive from a hospital in Riverdale to a church in Palmetto, 23 minutes on GA 154 through the small-town sprawl that connects the southern suburbs. Mercy does the math. $15.60 an hour. That's my rate. 3 years and $15.60. I started at $14.25. 3 years of driving 67 miles a day, carrying flowers to funerals and hospitals and weddings. 3 years of being the arms that carry what the heart sends. Produced a $1.35 raise. 45 cents per year. That's the value the company places on a year of my experience. 45 cents. She drives. The van is cold. The refrigeration unit maintains 40 degrees in the cargo area, and the insulation between the cargo area and the cab is not complete, which means the cab runs approximately 12 degrees cooler than the outside temperature, which in February is fine, but in August means the cab oscillates between the ambient heat from outside and the leaked cold from the cargo, the thermal confusion that produces the specific chill that flower delivery drivers know. The cold that is not weather but work, the cold that lives in the van the way heat lives in the telecom van, the occupational temperature that the body absorbs as a condition of the route. Bereavement leave is 1 day, 1 day. If an immediate family member dies, parent, spouse, child, sibling. Everbloom gives 1 day of paid leave. 1 day to bury your mother, 1 day to bury your father, 1 day to bury your husband. The funeral is 1 day. But the grief is not 1 day, and the logistics are not 1 day. The arrangements, the coordination with the funeral home, the obituary, the family that flies in, the food, the clothes, the wake, the service, the burial, the thank you cards, the estate, the house, the belongings, the life that a person leaves behind, and that the living must sort through and organize and decide. And the deciding takes weeks, and the company gives 1 day. She turns onto GA 154, heading south toward the church delivery in Palmetto. The other drivers have stories. Every driver who has been here more than a year has a bereavement story. A driver last March, his wife died. Car accident, 1 day. He took the 1 day. He was back on the route Tuesday. He was delivering wedding flowers on Tuesday. Arrangements for a couple's celebration of beginning, while his wife was being buried. He delivered the joy of other people's lives while his own life was ending. He didn't say anything. He completed the route. He went to the grave after the last delivery. He stood at a fresh grave in his Everbloom polo. Another driver, her father died in November. She took the 1 day. She spent the 1 day at the funeral home making arrangements. She missed the funeral because the funeral was the next day, and the next day was a route day. She missed her own father's funeral. She heard about it from her sister afterward. Her sister said the flowers were beautiful. Her sister didn't know who delivered them. When did your mother die? Thursday, last Thursday, 6 days ago. I took Friday off, the bereavement day. The funeral is tomorrow, Wednesday. And I'm driving today because Tuesday is not a bereavement day. Tuesday is a work day. My mother died on Thursday and I took Friday and the funeral is Wednesday, and I'm working Monday and Tuesday because Monday and Tuesday are not covered, and the not covered days are the days between the death and the burial, and the days between the death and the burial are the days when the grief is loudest and the company says, drive. She pauses. The van is on GA 154. The road is 2 lanes. The road passes through the kind of Georgia landscape that exists between suburbs, the fallow fields and the tree lines and the small churches and the roadside produce stands that are closed in February and that will reopen in June, and that mark the passage of seasons in a way that the suburbs do not. My mother's arrangement is in the van, right now, in the back. I loaded it this morning. Casket spray, white lilies, white roses, eucalyptus, 11 pounds. I loaded my mother's funeral flowers into this van at 4:15 this morning. I loaded them onto the non-slip mat. I secured them with the bungee strap. I checked the temperature. I checked the water level in the foam. I did for my mother's flowers what I do for every customer's flowers. The same care, the same protocol, the same 40 degrees. My mother's flowers are delivery number 9, 9 of 14. I will deliver my mother's flowers to the funeral home tomorrow morning between delivery 8, a birthday arrangement in Tyrone, and delivery 10, a hospital arrangement in Noonan. My mother's funeral is between a birthday and a get-well. My mother's goodbye is a stop on the route. The van is quiet. The van is the quietest place in the story. The specific silence that follows a sentence that should not need to be spoken, the silence of a woman who is delivering her own mother's funeral flowers because the company that employs her gave her 1 day of bereavement, and the 1 day was Friday, and the funeral is Wednesday. And the days between Friday and Wednesday are work days, and work days are route days, and route days include the funeral home where her mother will be laid to rest. Why don't you call in sick? Because sick days are unpaid. I don't have PTO. I used my PTO in September when my daughter had her tonsils out. I have 0 hours of PTO. Calling in sick means losing $124.80, a full day's pay. Losing $124.80 means the electric bill is late. The electric bill late means the $35 late fee. The $159.80 combined, the lost day plus the late fee, is the cost of grieving. The company has made grieving cost $159.80. So I drive. I drive with my mother's flowers in the back. I drive to the funeral home where my mother will be buried. I carry the casket spray through the door. I set it beside the casket. I adjust the card. I leave. I get back in the van. I drive to delivery 10. I carry the hospital arrangement to the patient's room. I adjust the card. I leave. I complete the route. I go home. I grieve on my own time because the company's time does not include grief, and grief does not include the company, and the two, the grief and the route, exist simultaneously in the same van, in the same body, on the same Tuesday. If Untold Hearts has become part of your week, consider joining the channel membership. A few dollars a month keeps these stories coming. Links are in the description. Now, back to the story. Day 3, the delivery. Wednesday, the funeral. Mercy arrives at the hub at 3:45 a.m. She loads the van. She loads her mother's casket spray, the arrangement that the Everbloom designers built from the order that Mercy placed and paid for with her Everbloom employee discount, the 20% discount that reduced the price from $595 to $476, and the $476 is still 3.5 days of pay. And the 3.5 days of pay is the cost of the flowers for the woman who raised her, and the cost is high, and the cost is paid because the flowers must be there, and the flowers must be perfect. The designers who built Mercy's mother's casket spray know Mercy. The designers work 20 feet from the loading dock. The designers see the drivers every morning. The designers know Mercy because Mercy has been loading their arrangements for 3 years, and because Mercy once told a designer, a woman named Selby, who has been designing for Everbloom for 9 years, that the sunflower arrangement she built for a hospital delivery was the most beautiful thing she had ever carried. Selby remembered. Selby built Mercy's mother's casket spray. Selby added 6 extra stems, 6 stems that are not on the order, 6 stems that the company did not charge for, 6 stems that Selby added, because Selby knows Mercy and Selby knows the arrangement is for Mercy's mother, and the 6 extra stems are the gift that one underpaid woman gives another underpaid woman when words are not enough and flowers are the only language left. The 6 extra stems cost Everbloom approximately $14 in wholesale flowers. The 6 extra stems cost Selby nothing. The 6 extra stems are the most expensive thing in the arrangement because they are made of grief and generosity, and the wholesale price of grief and generosity is not on any invoice. Delivery 9. Banks and Whitfield Funeral Home, Jonesboro. 10:15 a.m. The service begins at 11. Mercy backs the van into the receiving area. She opens the cargo doors. She lifts the casket spray. 11 pounds, white lilies, white roses, eucalyptus, and she carries it through the service entrance and down the hallway to the main chapel and through the chapel doors, and she sees the casket. Her mother's casket, cherry wood, closed. The family's choice, closed because the cancer had changed her mother's face in the final weeks, and the family wanted the congregation to remember the face from before, the face that laughed and sang in the choir at New Hope Baptist, and cooked Sunday dinner for 11 people, and drove Mercy to school every morning in a Buick LeSabre with the windows down and the radio on, and the morning air carrying the smell of Georgia pine through the car. Mercy sets the casket spray beside the casket. She adjusts the placement, centered, the cascading lilies draping toward the floor, the roses open and full, the eucalyptus framing the edges. She adjusts the card. The card reads, "For Mama." The garden is quieter now. Mercy, Keandra, and the girls. She stands at the casket. She stands in her Everbloom uniform, the black polo with the green logo, the work pants, the non-slip shoes that she wears on the route. She is wearing her work uniform at her mother's funeral, because the funeral is a delivery, and the delivery requires the uniform, and the uniform is what she is wearing when she says goodbye to the woman who raised her. Leighton is in the van. He is sitting in the passenger seat. He is watching through the windshield as Mercy walks back through the service entrance. She is walking differently now, slower, the specific slowness of a person who has just set flowers beside a casket and who has walked away from the casket and who is walking toward the van that will carry her to delivery 10, the birthday arrangement in Tyrone, the arrangement that celebrates a life, while the arrangement she just delivered mourns one. She gets in the van. She closes the door. She puts her hands on the steering wheel. She does not start the engine. That's my mother. I know. That's my mother's casket. Those are my mother's flowers. I arranged the delivery. I loaded the van. I drove the route. I carried the spray. I set it beside her casket. I adjusted the card. And now I'm going to drive to Tyrone and deliver a birthday arrangement. And then I'm going to drive to Noonan and deliver a hospital arrangement. And then I'm going to finish the route. And then I'm going to come back here at 5 p.m. in a black dress and sit in the front pew and look at the flowers that I delivered this morning in my work uniform. She wipes her eyes with the back of her hand. The motion is fast, not the slow wipe of a person indulging in tears, but the quick wipe of a person clearing the tears so the tears don't interfere with the driving. And the driving is the job, and the job is the route. And the route has 5 more deliveries after this one. And the deliveries don't wait for the tears to finish because the tears don't finish and the route must. The woman at the front desk saw my name on the delivery manifest. Blanton. Same as the service. Della Blanton. She looked at my badge. She looked at me. She said, "Are you family?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "And you're delivering?" And I said, "Yes." And she didn't say anything after that. She just held the door. She held the door while I carried my mother's flowers through it. She held the door and she watched me set the flowers beside the casket, and she watched me walk back, and she held the door again, and I walked through it, and I got in this van, and the door closed behind me, and the door closed behind me is the sentence that describes the entire relationship between this company and its drivers. The door closes behind us. We carry the flowers in. The door closes behind us. Nobody holds it on the way back. Mercy. Don't. Don't say you're sorry. Say you'll fix it. Say that no driver at Everbloom will ever deliver flowers to their own mother's funeral because the company gave them 1 day to bury a parent. Say that. That's what I need. Not sorry. Fixed. She starts the engine. She drives to Tyrone. The birthday arrangement is for a woman turning 80. The card reads, "Happy birthday, Grandma. Love always." Mercy carries the arrangement to the front door. The woman's granddaughter answers. The granddaughter is smiling. The granddaughter is celebrating. Mercy hands over the flowers and the granddaughter says, "These are beautiful." And Mercy says, "Happy birthday" to her. And the door closes and Mercy walks back to the van, and the van still smells like lilies, her mother's lilies, the residual scent of the casket spray that was in the cargo area an hour ago, and that is now beside a casket in Jonesboro. And the scent is still in the van because the scent does not know that the delivery is over. She completes the route. 14 deliveries, 67 miles. She returns the van to the hub at 1:40 p.m. She drives her Honda Accord to the apartment. She changes. The black polo becomes a black dress. The non-slip shoes become the black heels that she wore to her cousin's wedding and that she now wears to her mother's funeral. Because the shoes are the only black heels she owns, and the shoes have been to a celebration and a goodbye, and the shoes do not know the difference. She arrives at Banks in Whitfield at 4:45. She walks through the front entrance, not the service entrance, the front entrance, the entrance that the family uses, the entrance that the mourners use, the entrance for people who are here to grieve and not to deliver. She walks down the aisle. She sees the casket spray, the white lilies, the white roses, the eucalyptus. The arrangement is exactly as she placed it this morning, centered, cascading, the roses open, the card visible. The arrangement has been there all day. The arrangement was delivered by the same hands that are now folded in the front pew. The arrangement was adjusted by the same fingers that are now interlocked in grief. The arrangement was carried by the same arms that now rest in the lap of a woman in a black dress who was, this morning, in a black polo. The service begins. The leadership meeting is Thursday. Leighton walks in carrying a funeral program. Mercy's mother's funeral program. The folded card with the photograph on the front and the order of service inside and the scripture and the hymns and the years, 1959 to 2026, the compressed biography of a woman's life printed on cardstock. "This is the funeral program for the mother of one of our drivers," he says. "Our driver delivered her own mother's casket spray. She loaded it into the van at 4:15 a.m. She drove the route. She carried the spray into the funeral home. She set it beside her mother's casket. She adjusted the card. She walked back to the van. She drove to the next delivery. She delivered a birthday arrangement. She completed the route. Then she came back in a black dress and sat in the front pew and looked at the flowers she had delivered that morning in her work uniform." He sets the program on the table. "She did this because our bereavement policy is 1 day, 1 paid day. Her mother died on Thursday. She took Friday. The funeral was Wednesday. Monday and Tuesday she drove the route because Monday and Tuesday are not bereavement days. She drove her own mother's funeral flowers to the funeral home because calling in sick costs $159.80, the lost day plus the late fee on the electric bill, and $159.80 is the price we put on grief. The VP of Finance, a man named Duff Everly, has the benefits budget on his screen. Expanding bereavement leave has caused implications across Duff. A woman delivered her own mother's casket spray. She loaded 11 pounds of white lilies into a van at 4:15 in the morning. She drove the van to the funeral home. She carried the spray through the service entrance. She set it beside the casket. She adjusted the card she wrote, the card that says, "For Mama." She walked back to the van. She drove to the next delivery. She delivered a birthday arrangement to a woman turning 80. She delivered joy after delivering grief. She carried both in the same van on the same route on the same day. And the reason, the entire reason, is 1 day. 1 day of bereavement. She couldn't afford the unpaid days. She couldn't afford the $159.80 that grieving would cost. We made her grief more expensive than her labor. Tell me the cost implications. The room is quiet. The room is quiet the way rooms are quiet when the quiet is accountability, when the silence contains the recognition that the institution has failed in a way that the institution's metrics did not detect, because the metrics measure efficiency and cost and delivery windows, and the metrics do not measure the weight of carrying your own mother's funeral flowers in a work van. The cost of 1 day of bereavement leave for immediate family is the cost of a temporary driver for 1 day, $180. The cost of 5 days is $900. The cost of 5 days across the 43 drivers and designers who experienced an immediate family death last year, $38,700. $38,000. We spent $42,000 on the lobby renovation at the Buckhead shop last quarter. We spent more on the lobby than we spend on letting our people bury their families. Bereavement leave. 1 day becomes 5 paid days for immediate family, parent, spouse, child, sibling. 3 paid days for extended family, grandparent, aunt, uncle, in-law. The leave begins the day after notification, not the day of the funeral. The leave covers the logistics that surround a death, the arrangements, the coordination, the family, the things that a person must do when a person dies and that the living must handle, and that 1 day does not cover. Cost, $38,700 annually, offset by the reduction in sick day abuse, the informal bereavement that drivers currently take by calling in sick because the bereavement policy doesn't cover the days they need, the sick calls that cost the company $52,000 annually in overtime coverage. The expanded bereavement saves $13,300 net. Driver compensation, $15.60 becomes $20.25. The raise reflects 3 years of requests that were denied or deferred, 3 years of 45-cent annual increases that communicated to the drivers that their experience was worth 45 cents. The cost across 61 drivers, $1.8 million. The turnover cost at 58%, the recruiting, the training, the route disruption, the temporary coverage, the customer dissatisfaction when a substitute driver delivers the wrong arrangement to the wrong funeral home. $1.2 million annually. The net cost, $600,000. The net cost of paying a driver $20.25 to carry what the heart sends, $600,000 in a company that generates $23 million in revenue. Delivery manifest policy. No driver delivers to a funeral for a family member. The system flags it. The delivery is reassigned. The driver is offered the bereavement day. The driver does not carry her own mother's flowers in the van. The driver does not set the spray beside her own mother's casket. The driver does not walk back to the van in her work uniform. The system prevents it because the system should have prevented it, and the system did not prevent it because the system did not know, and the system did not know because nobody built the system to know, because nobody imagined that a driver would deliver flowers to her own mother's funeral, because nobody imagined the policy was that thin. PTO policy. Drivers accrue PTO at the rate of 1 hour per 20 hours worked, double the current rate of 1 hour per 40. The acceleration means a full-time driver accrues approximately 104 hours per year instead of 52. The additional 52 hours, 6.5 additional days, provide the buffer that drivers currently lack, the buffer between a tonsillectomy in September and a death in February, the buffer that prevents the choice between grieving and paying the electric bill. Designer compensation, $16.90 becomes $21.50. The designers build the arrangements that the drivers deliver. The designer's art is the product. The designer's hands are the hands that cut the stems and place the roses and tie the ribbons and build the casket sprays that sit beside the caskets of the people who have died. The designers build the goodbye. The goodbye is worth more than $16.90. Employee bereavement arrangements. When an Everbloom employee loses an immediate family member, the company provides the funeral arrangement at cost, not the employee discount, at cost. The wholesale cost of a casket spray is approximately $118. The retail price is $595. The employee discount brings it to $476. The at-cost price brings it to $118. The difference, $358 is the difference between a company that sells flowers to its grieving employees and a company that gives flowers to its grieving employees. The flowers are the product. The product should comfort the people who make it. The cost across an estimated 12 employee bereavements per year, $4,300 in foregone margin. The goodwill, incalculable. Childcare support. Everbloom partners with a local childcare network to provide subsidized early morning care for drivers and designers with children. The subsidy covers the difference between standard daycare hours and the 3:30 a.m. start time that the hub requires. The cost per employee, $85 per week. The cost across the 14 employees who currently rely on informal arrangements, the neighbors, the grandmothers, the $40 per week solutions that a single mother patches together because the company starts at an hour that the childcare industry does not serve, $63,700 annually. The cost replaces the informal with the formal, the fragile with the stable, the patch with the plan. One more thing. Leighton holds up the funeral program. This goes in the hub, on the wall beside the design tables, with the words, "A driver delivered her own mother's flowers. We gave her 1 day to grieve. She needed 5. No Everbloom driver will ever deliver to their own family's funeral. The flowers carry the feelings. The company carries the driver." And every funeral arrangement that leaves this building leaves with the knowledge that the driver who carries it is a person who carries loss and joy in the same van on the same route on the same day, and the person deserves more than the van. 3 months later, Mercy took the 5 days, the 5 bereavement days that the new policy provides, the 5 days that she did not have when her mother died, and that she has now because the policy changed, and the policy changed because a CEO sat in the passenger seat of a delivery van while a driver delivered her own mother's casket spray, and the CEO understood that 1 day is not enough, and 5 days is not enough either, but 5 days is closer to enough than 1 day, and the closer is the direction. She used the 5 days to sort through her mother's house, the house in Jonesboro where Mercy grew up, the house with the garden in the back where her mother grew zinnias and hostas, and the roses that bloomed every May, and that her mother cut and brought inside and put in a vase on the kitchen table. The garden is still there. Mercy waters it on Saturdays. The bereavement policy is the thing the drivers talk about most, not the wage increase, the bereavement. The 5 days. The 5 days communicate something that the wage does not communicate, which is, we know you are a person who loses people. We know that loss requires time. We know that time is the thing we sell, delivery windows, routing schedules, the 90-minute chain from cooler to casket. And we know that the time we sell should not be the time you need to grieve. The 5 days are the company saying, your time belongs to you when your family needs you. The delivery manifest flag has prevented 6 reassignments in 90 days, 6 drivers who would have delivered to a family member's funeral. 6 drivers who were flagged by the system and reassigned and offered the bereavement day. 6 drivers who did not carry their own family's flowers in the van. 6 drivers who did not walk into a funeral home in their work uniform to set flowers beside a casket that held someone they loved. The turnover rate at 90 days, 58%, has dropped to 33%, 25 points. The drivers are staying. The drivers are staying because the pay is $20.25, and the bereavement is 5 days, and the PTO accrues at double the rate, and the designers are paid $21.50, and the lobby renovation budget was redirected to the people who make the product instead of the space that displays it. Mercy still drives Route 7. She still carries the feelings, the joy to the hospital, the sympathy to the funeral home, the romance to the restaurant, the congratulations to the office. She still loads the van at 4:15. She still checks the temperature. She still adjusts the cards. She is still the arms that carry what the heart sends. Keandra, the 15-year-old, asked Mercy last week if she could work at Everbloom in the summer. Keandra wants to be a designer. Keandra has been watching the designers through the hub window when Mercy brings her along on Saturday overtime shifts. The same way Mercy watched her mother arrange flowers in the garden, the transmission of an interest from one generation to the next, the quiet inheritance that happens when a child sees beauty being made and wants to make it. Mercy said she'd ask. Mercy will ask. Mercy will ask because the company is different now, and the different means a 15-year-old might see a future in flowers instead of seeing what Mercy saw, which was a company that gave one day to grieve and that classified its drivers as vans. Amara, the 8-year-old, drew a picture. The picture is on the refrigerator at the apartment. The picture is a drawing of a van, a white van with flowers visible through the windows, flowers of every color, flowers that fill the van from floor to roof. Beside the van is a woman, stick figure, brown skin, the specific artistic rendering of an 8-year-old who draws her mother as a giant next to a small van because the mother is larger than the van in the child's understanding. Under the drawing, in the handwriting of a second grader, "My mom delivers flowers to people." The drawing does not distinguish between deliveries. The drawing does not separate the funerals from the birthdays. The drawing shows a van full of flowers and a woman who carries them, and the woman is large, and the van is small, and the flowers are everywhere. But she no longer carries her own grief in the van. The grief is at home now, where grief belongs, in the house where the garden grows, where the zinnias bloom in summer, where the roses will open in May, where her mother's vase sits on the kitchen table with fresh flowers that Mercy cuts from the garden every Saturday. The flowers are from the garden. The flowers are not from Everbloom. The flowers are from the soil that her mother tended. The flowers carry the feeling that Everbloom cannot sell, which is the feeling of a daughter in a garden that her mother planted, cutting flowers for a vase that her mother filled in a house that her mother built into a home. The casket spray is gone. The lilies have faded. The roses have dried. The eucalyptus has lost its scent. The flowers did what flowers do. They bloomed, and they said goodbye, and they faded. The program is on the wall at the hub. The program is the before. The policy is the after. The distance between them is 4 days, and the entire difference between a company that counts its drivers as vans and a company that counts its drivers as people. Thank you for watching this story. If it reminded you that the person who delivers the flowers might be grieving too, share it. Subscribe to Untold Hearts for more stories about the people who carry what we send. Tell us in the comments, have you ever had to work on the worst day of your life?